Here we are again to talk aviation. Another 2 weeks flies by, and on the time of the week that we do this, every second week, usually there's something on, Martin, and big week for Airbus.
Big week, yes, indeed. The A320neo has just received type certification from EASA and the FAA.
So it's all good to go for deliveries now, is it?
That's it. It looks like they'll be getting the first one out this year.
And the launch customer is who again?
Qatar.
Yeah. Okay, yes, because I read something a week or so ago. Someone at the Airbus factory said the Qatar engines have arrived.
Yes.
Which was a signal that it was all go. They're about to get
that as well. Yeah.
Certification, and there will be a delivery soon. So we'll start to see those in the skies. There'll be pictures soon, and it won't be too long before we see them in New Zealand.
No, it won't be that long at all.
In New Zealand. And we're going to see the A321s. And I don't think we've seen A321s in NZ before.
No, that's going to be a big day. A321s going across the Tasman, I expect.
So the NEO, all go.
All go.
A320neo type certification this week.
Yes.
And let's get into a few of the other big stories around this week. We're looking at a Russian fighter that's been shot down for spending 15 seconds in, Turkish airspace?
Apparently, yeah.
15 seconds is not very long.
No. It's not long enough to shoot it down, obviously.
Okay, so first of all, what's the aircraft involved? What did the Turks shoot down? A Russian Air Force plane?
Sukhoi Su-24.
And what do they do? What do they use them for?
It's basically the Russian version of the F-111.
Okay, so that's quite heavy-duty equipment, right?
Big plane, swing wings, side-by-side seating. Very similar to the F-111, actually.
Okay, and they used what for, obviously, ground attack role?
Bombers.
Yeah,
ground attack bombers.
Okay, so 15 seconds, if that's true, if this Russian aircraft spent 15 seconds in Turkish airspace, and I noticed that Putin says they weren't there at all anyway, that seems like an inadvertent incursion rather than, I'm going to go off somewhere and bomb a city of yours if you don't stop me.
Yeah, if you look at a map of the incident, there's this tiny little tongue of Turkish airspace which sort of digs into Syria, and it looks like at some stage that, this Russian plane may have flown over this 1 or 2 kilometers of Turkish airspace, which, again, perhaps was quite hard to avoid. Maybe they were taking a calculated risk. Anyway, Turks shot them down, and Vladimir's not happy.
No. Again, obviously, Russia weren't going to attack Turkey, were they? They're not there to attack Turkish forces. So,
no.
And everyone knows that. It's been described as a provocative act.
Indeed.
Well, you could actually make a case for that, couldn't you?
Well, yes, and Vladimir Putin's saying that they will not tolerate such behavior and that Turkey is the accomplice of terrorists. Because why wouldn't Turkey want Russia to help deal to ISIL unless Turkey didn't want ISIL dealt to?
Yeah, but it's a risk, isn't it? It's a risky business, attacking a Russian plane like that in this sort of heightened, tense
especially as the West
situation.
is now kind of cozying up to Russia over this whole Syria thing.
Yeah, okay, so what are the implications? Turkish have got a big airline business between Russia and Turkey. I think they fly into 7 major Russian cities, and we're planning on expanding into more. Vladimir Putin has said don't go to Turkey, basically, if you're a Russian person.
Yeah, and the Russian foreign minister, who is due to visit Turkey later this week, he's cancelled his visit. So, things could get quite interesting. And, I think the accusation is, quite valid. What has Turkey got against Russia dealing to ISIL, and so what if they went over your territory for 15 seconds?
Yeah.
You could lodge a formal protest, there's all sorts of things you could do before you shot them down.
Yeah, that's what I say. It's a dangerous game.
Exactly, and as you say, it's not like they were attacking targets in Russia. In
Turkey.
Yeah.
That also puts the NATO allies of Turkey in a bit of a tough situation, doesn't it? Because,
absolutely.
What do they do here? Do they support Turkey? And I believe there are clauses that can be invoked that sort of demand support from your NATO partners, no matter what.
Like I say, especially as now it looks like a lot of the Western countries are beginning to, if not back Russia, sort of tacitly support what Russia are doing, with the realization that they should probably be doing something quite similar. Now, whether or not we agree with that, that's a whole other thing. But it does seem that opinion is going more with the Russian way of doing things than not, which is, who knows?
Okay.
I mean, it is also quite interesting, some of those missions from a purely aeronautical perspective. It's quite interesting seeing the path some of those big bombers are taking. So they're bombing targets within Syria using those Tupolev 160s, which are like B-1B, but a third bigger.
Right, yeah, those real big ones.
And there's two pathways they're taking. So one of them is they're flying south out of bases in central southern Russia. Well, still western Russia, but the southern and central parts of western Russia.
Right.
Flying south over the Caspian Sea. So they fly right down the middle of the Caspian Sea. They get escorted over Iranian airspace by, ironically enough, F-14s and F-4s, amongst other things.
Of the Iranian Air Force?
Of the Iranian Air Force.
F-14s, incredible.
Yeah, and a couple of MiG-29s, which the Iranians also have. And that's the short route into Syria. And then once they're in Syria, they launch cruise missiles.
And, of course, the Iranians are going to help them because they want to see the ISIS people, evildoers, dealt too.
But another quite interesting demonstration of air power is the other route they're taking, which is taking off from the Kola Peninsula, which is tucked up behind Finland in the far north.
Okay, yeah.
And they fly north out of there, around Scandinavia, around the UK, so down the Atlantic.
Gosh.
And they turn left at Gibraltar and fly slap bang down the middle of the Mediterranean, not crossing over any country's territory, and then launch cruise missiles out to sea off the Syrian coast. And then once the missiles are launched, they then go back up the Caspian and back to base. These missions are 13,000 kilometers long.
Crikey.
Yeah.
They're doing that to, what, show they can do it?
I think, yes, definitely the reason.
So everyone gets the idea, don't sort of muck around with us, because here's what we can do.
Probably sponsored by major American defense contractors who want that new bomber contract.
Yeah, pay them off to scare the funders in Washington into funding the program. Okay, well, I wonder where this one will end up. They'll have to bury it somehow. It's there's too much of a big picture at work here to let something like that derail everything.
Absolutely, yes. They'll be told to pull their head
But Russia will get leverage from it, won't it?
Yes, I would expect they will, because I think they have legitimate grounds to be relatively unhappy about this.
And it confirmed it's a bomb on the Metrojet plane out of, what was it, Sharm el-Sheikh 2 weeks ago. And they're saying that maybe a 15-year-old put...
No, it was under her seat.
Or it was under a 15-year-old's seat.
Yeah,
in the area where the life raft goes.
Yeah, they've identified the person who was sitting in the seat under which the bomb was placed. They're not saying she had anything to do with it.
Right. It got blown up. Someone got it on the plane. So it must have been an inside job.
Absolutely.
To get it on there.
Yeah.
And a bit later on, when we talk about our aircraft of the day, speaking of the Russian shoot-down, we'll profile that aircraft.
Su-24.
Yeah. Okay, it looks like a serious piece of kit.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's an F-111 analog.
Every now and then, a great space story comes up, and we've talked about Elon Musk and his efforts to get a launch delivery system going, which he has got going, with a Dragon capsule, is it?
Yeah, and he's just received an order from NASA for manned flights next year.
Okay,
to resupply the space station.
Goes to the next level.
So you hear a lot about SpaceX because they really put themselves out there.
But the guy who set up Amazon, Bezos is his name, Jeff Bezos, right? Now, this seems to be what happens for super wealthy internet billionaires who are just so high on the IQ scale. What do you do after that? Well, you look to space, I suppose, and he's done that too.
And Blue Origin's been going for a while.
First I've heard of it.
I know, but Blue Origin's been around for a while, but they've been very, very cagey. They haven't been going to the press much, so every now and again they'll put up a new video, but you don't hear too much about them. But this new video they've put up of the Blue Origin New Shepard, that's pretty spectacular, isn't it?
Yeah, so this thing it's that concept of being able to reuse the spacecraft, isn't it?
Yes.
So you blast off in the traditional way and up into low Earth orbit.
Well, this is
120 Ks.
This is only for low Earth orbit for their space tourism thing.
But you can see where it's
absolutely
it's going.
It's a proof of concept.
And then the capsule comes off as you would expect, and the rocket flies itself back down to the ground. Basically, it falls like a rock.
Man, it falls like a rock. If anybody watches the video, it careens out of the sky. And it's sort amazing.
In the last couple of 100 feet, it seems 500 feet. Let's say the engine sort of blast up again, slow it down, and it sort of comes into landing.
It goes from 20. They start calling it out 20,000 feet, then 2-3 seconds later, 12,000 feet.
Yeah.
Engine starts at 5,000 feet. It sort of stabilizes the approach at 400 feet.
Yeah, not far from the ground.
No, the struts pop out the sides. It gimbals around. I mean, it moves around all over the place.
Yeah.
It comes down to one side of the landing pad, stabilizes itself, and then sort of lurches sideways a bit and puts itself down slap bang in the middle of the pad.
Really solid.
Really solid.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And ready to, be carted off to the launch pad and used again.
Well, yeah. turn it around, refuel
In the meantime, the capsule comes down with a parachute thing, lands on land like the Russians do, not out in the ocean. You wouldn't want that, would you?
No.
Like, where am I?
Yeah.
There's no one around.
Yeah, no.
At 60 k's down range, we got it wrong.
Yeah.
And big windows in the capsule, so when you're up there floating around for 4 minutes, weightless, you've got these huge windows to look through. You see basically you're off the planet, really, aren't you? You are.
You're 100 kilometres and 500 metres up. That's the mission, to get you above that 100 kilometre.
Now, that's higher than Virgin Galactic, isn't it?
Yes. You're up there for 4 minutes. It's a parabolic thing. You're there for 4 minutes, so you get 4 minutes of weightlessness. At one stage, you're at Mach 3.72. So you get into space, you get to break the sound barrier, and you get a big window. So, yeah, it's all good.
It's a real bucket list venture. How long, what time frame are they talking?
Well, again, they don't really say, because Blue Origin doesn't put an awful lot out about that.
But it works, obviously. It's working.
It seems to be working, and I'm pretty sure there'll be more information soon.
So this is great for NASA, because at some point they're going to have a bunch of competing companies, all with great technology. I mean, get ready for another space race, surely.
Interesting things happening. They've just unveiled this new instrument which lets you tell much more accurately what asteroids are made up of. And now the whole question's coming about is who owns the asteroids and what claim can people make to asteroids. Now, it looks like the Americans are going down the route. If you get there, you can mine it.
Yeah, sort of like a salvage mentality.
And yes, sort of like a salvage mentality. And they reckon the price of rocketry is falling to such a point, it might actually be cheaper to go to an asteroid if you know exactly what's in it, than to go around the world prospecting for it and digging holes in it.
Because you higher certainty of getting what you want there.
Exactly.
You just got to get to it.
Yeah, get to it and it's yours.
And you're talking about things that are just sort of quite nearby, right?
That's what they're saying.
Not that far away.
Not really that far away, and you could go and get a lump of nickel or a lump of whatever it is.
And bring it back to Earth and sort of
somehow bring it back.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting proposition when they say, right, we've got this 500-ton asteroid we want to deorbit. You say, I'm not so sure about that.
Well, you'd have to slow it down.
Yes, you'd have to strap motors to it, and the capacity for that to go wrong is almost endless, isn't it?
Because you think about the speed some of these things are going, and they'll be relative to you going in different directions or.
I don't see them bringing it back anytime soon.
So you go and you whack off a bit of it and then bring that back.
It would have to be worth a lot, wouldn't it? Or, I mean, I wonder if in 25, 50 years, 500 years, whatever, they'll just orbit it and then build stuff out of it up there. Like if you wanted to build a space station, you need a lot of metal. Well, if you went and got an iron meteorite...
You go and build the thing on site near the supply, primary supply of the
build it in
construction material or whatever.
But these are all pipe dreams, aren't they, at the moment?
What's it called?
It's Blue Origin.
Blue Origin.
Company, and it's called the New Shepard.
Ah, the New Shepard, eh?
And it's a really stubby-looking little thing, isn't it?
Biblical sounding. It is, yeah. It looks like it's sort of top-heavy with the capsule on it.
Yeah.
And it's got those... We were talking about the sequence of it landing. It's got those stabilizing sort of surfaces that pop out of the top of it.
Yeah, sort of drag flaps.
Yeah.
And if anyone's interested in watching it, the title of the video is Historic Rocket Landing, and it's on the Blue Origin channel.
Go dial it up on YouTube. Sad news at the weekend, Martin, with the crash of the Squirrel helicopter at Fox Glacier.
Yeah.
With, I think, 6 tourist passengers on, a mix of Aussies and people from the UK. Pilot killed as well. He was a local. Interesting picture that was published that the police put out showing the rotor blade sort of sticking above the ice crevasse.
Yeah.
Those blades look relatively undamaged to me, which sort of said to me that they may not have been turning too quickly when they hit.
Who knows?
Because, you've seen helicopters that have crashed down on something. The rotors, they disintegrate. They eat themselves. But the fuselage obviously smashed to pieces, crushed. I wonder if maybe they did touch the edge of something or they got hit with a downdraft. I mean, speculation's never going to get you anywhere, but...
No. 6 tourists dead.
It's sad. So,
sad.
These things will happen, though, in mountain terrain. It's a dangerous place to fly.
It is.
Especially in glaciers. And, look at the difficulty of getting to the crash site. It's taken all week. I think they've only got half of them out, or just over. So, yeah, very sad. Squirrel helicopter, very capable machine.
Very capable, yeah.
I remember flying in a Squirrel from Las Vegas into the Grand Canyon. Same thing. There's about 6 or 7 passengers in the pilot. No problem.
Was that a single engine?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
They call it an A-Star or something.
Okay.
But yeah, no problem. And it was quite a long trip, 45 in, 45 back.
It's pretty tight with 7 people in it, isn't it?
Yeah, but we lifted off inside the canyon. I think we were maybe 1,200 feet up or something like that in terms of above sea level. Quite hot, you know.
I did a flight.
7 people in there. It still got off, no problem.
I did a flight around the Grand Canyon in a Twin Otter.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
From that little airfield next door.
Yeah, so we took off and we were at 300 feet, and then suddenly we were at 4,000 feet.
Yeah,
as
you
we
come
went
out over the rim of the canyon. I know, it's mind-blowingly.
And we had to stay up for a little while because the guy said, oh, look down there, there's all the helicopters, and there was like this line of 5 or 6 helicopters.
Martin, every now and then a story on MH370 comes through. There's been one in the last week or so. This is reported at the Australian Yahoo.com. They're saying here that there's a strong belief in the aviation industry that searchers scouring the southern Indian Ocean for missing Malaysian Airlines flight MH370 may find the 777 in the next 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Survey ship the Fugro Discovery resumed the deep-sea search in a location identified 11 months ago by a 777 captain. And this is Captain Simon Hardy, and that is quite a bit south of the southern tip of Western Australia. And his theory is that the Malaysian Airlines pilot made a deliberate controlled ditching in the southern Indian Ocean after flying for 7 hours. Apparently that view is shared by a former Emirates pilot by the name of Byron Bailey. Mr. Bailey said Captain Hardy's explanation was the only logical conclusion for the aircraft's disappearance. Otherwise, the aircraft would have flown itself to the destination, Mr. Bailey said.
Oh.
Though I remember that Eastern Airlines L1011 crash in Miami where they leant on the control column, disconnected the autopilot without knowing, and flew into the Everglades.
Perfectly controlled flight.
Perfectly controlled at something like 250 feet a minute.
Yeah.
Didn't even notice. So, I mean, that's not to say that the control systems are the same, but that's happened before. Do you think they might be aware of that? Maybe they don't know their history. Anyway, US-based historian and statistician Mike Chillett, I haven't heard of him, but he's mentioned in the story. He's followed the search very closely. He disagrees. He says he doesn't subscribe to that theory. It's horrible disservice to the family of the pilot and everyone else, he says. That kind of speculation has no place in responsible investigations without much more compelling evidence. I think he's got a point.
Yeah.
And we talked last program that we did about what opinions were on how the growth pattern of those barnacles found on that flaperon at Reunion Island came about.
Yeah.
And I think the upshot was they would have either had to have been very stable in a fixed position over a long period of time to get that sort of coverage, or tumbling in a way.
Constantly immersed.
They're constantly immersed, and there was time for the stuff to grow on it, right? And it seems like the earlier explanation of it being held under the water for a period of time in a locked position or in a limited movement position is more likely.
Yes, but in a relatively shallow position as well, though.
Yeah, because of the species of the barnacles and mussels and shellfish. So, well, maybe in the next program or two, there'll be answers to this.
Yeah, once they get that boat out there, once the southern storms have subsided, because that's apparently what they're waiting for, they'll get back out there.
Here's the thing. Why would you fly for 7 hours contemplating? You'd have to keep up your state of mind for all that time,
with
wouldn't
people
you?
bashing on the door.
Yeah, and people, begging for their lives? And then doing a beautifully controlled flight into the ocean
Because if they've got
at night?
Yeah, unless you turned off the seatback entertainment system, people would be watching the map and saying, "Oh my, why are we flying here?"
That's right. It doesn't fit intuitively for me.
No.
It seems like the least likely explanation.
That said, they do seem very confident.
Though, all through this, particularly this episode, there have been certain people who've jumped to wild theories.
Yes.
I mean, there was those guys who wrote a book about it. The Kiwi guys, he's running an airline now, Ewan Wilson.
Yeah.
They said he did it too.
Yeah.
But how would you know? It's how it got to be pointing that way. That's what needs explaining.
Yes.
And speaking of Ewan Wilson, the Kiwi Regional Airlines, which we've been following using the Saab 340, remember how they launched on that Dunedin Queenstown service? Well, they've had issues with bums on seats, weather as well. They've come out now and have axed Dunedin Queenstown flight effective November 30th.
That's interesting because I know they realized very early on that they had too many frequencies. But there was a fair bit of questioning very early on when they announced this flight as to, really? Dunedin, Queenstown? It's not really far enough, is it? It's only, a 3-hour drive.
Ewan Wilson's quoted in Stuff saying the Queenstown route had been extremely challenging due to weather-related cancellations, low passenger bookings. We made a commercial decision to end the scheduled Queenstown flights before they affected the performance of the whole company. Well, he learnt from his last episode on that one. And Stuff is saying the airline is now considering new regions such as Hawke's Bay, Bay of Plenty and Taranaki.
I can't say I'm surprised that Dunedin, Queenstown didn't work out. I was if you remember the show, it was about 4 or 5 shows ago, I was quite surprised that they were, because the way they were talking it up, that was going to be sort of not their main route, but one of the, a very important driver of the business and everything, and personally I didn't see it. Yeah.
And before we go on to our aircraft of the day, the debate on the Wellington Airport runway extension still going on. It seems that the pilots and the operators want overrun areas within international specs.
Okay.
But the airport company are saying, well, that will make the cost prohibitive. We can't do it. So obviously there's some arm wrestling going on there. But
on the other hand, they do think it's going to have a big economic boost to Wellington, don't they?
It'll happen.
Billions.
It'll happen.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll happen. I'm just reading here from the Stuff story. People are saying that the market demand out of Wellington for long haul amounts to about 679 passengers each day, each way. So I don't quite know where that is to, but apparently 1,300 international passengers travel a day out of Wellington.
Okay.
As it stands at the moment.
Right. So 600 a day, that's 2-3 plane loads.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. And if you can get a 787-800 in there, which doesn't take that many to fill it, but can economically fly long distance, you got your plane.
Yeah. They shouldn't scrimp. It's a dumb thing to scrimp on.
Yeah, false economy, eh?
Make it as easy as possible for anyone to operate it. Make it a good... Okay, there's a wind issue there. There's no question about that. But make it nice and long enough to handle, anything that might happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Invest in it now. Don't penny pinch.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Deputy Mayor, Justin Lester, is saying that the detailed report showed the money spent to date had not been wasted, and that's quite a few $1 million. As the economic case was moving forward, it was pretty compelling, and if the runway gets a resource consent, the council would seek as firm a commitment as possible from an airline to begin long-haul flights before proceeding. Then the airline says, what? We have a downturn and we want to pull out, and you're saying, well, hang on, we built this runway for you.
Yeah, no, it's
not a very good negotiating position, is it?
Well, at least they can say we've got some airlines, whether if they pull out or not. Oh, it's too late now, we better carry on.
Okay. All right, airplane of the week. We thought, given this is topical, we'd mention this one, and that is the aircraft that the Turks have just shot down, the Russian plane, the Sukhoi, isn't it?
Sukhoi Su-24.
Now, you said it was a sort of F-111 type.
Broadly,
in that class,
yes, slightly smaller, slightly shorter range, but basically an all-weather, high-speed bomber, swing wing, side-by-side cockpit, side-by-side for the same reason that the F-111, they needed to fit a big radar dish to the front of it, so they couldn't keep it any narrower, so they sat the pilots next to each other. Designed in the mid-60s, went into service in the mid-70s, flown by many Soviet client states around the world, and by all accounts, a very good aircraft.
It's been around for ages.
Yeah, 8 tons of bombs over about 3,000 kilometres. They've been flying since the mid-70s.
First flew before Sgt. Pepper's album was released.
Oh, there you go.
Or about the same time.
There's a bit of...
And still operational, though. They don't fly them much, do they? So they'd have low hours. They're supersonic, aren't they?
Yes, supersonic.
8 tons. That's a pretty good load.
Yeah, it's Russia flies them, Kazakhstan flies them, Iran flies them, a few countries in Africa. By all accounts, they've been a very popular aircraft. Angola and a few other countries flew them, but apparently from a technical perspective, they were quite difficult to... They were packed full of state-of-the-art electronics for the 70s.
Right.
Terrain following and all this, and apparently that took a bit of working on to keep up to spec.
Right.
Yeah, and the Russians still actually have quite a lot of them. They've just refitted a whole bunch of them.
Okay.
Mm.
And this is the aircraft you use when you want to bomb... sort of militia, insurgents, those sorts of things.
It's a small, low-level bomber. I mean, they built 1,400 of them, so there were a lot of them around. It was the first fully developed swing wing, so in that more than only the outer part of the wing was
Right, the whole
swung.
wing, yeah.
Because some of the early Russian Sukhois, they were swing wing, but it was only sort of the outside half or third swung. That's so they didn't have to have pivoting weapons pylons.
Oh, right, yeah, because as the wing slides out, of course, the thing all the stuff has to stay straight on the wing.
The early Sukhois, while being swing wing, they put all their, and they were fighters. They had all their missiles and everything on the fuselage or on the glove,
makes sense.
glove.
Yeah.
But this one was a proper swing wing, big plane, heavy plane, relatively fast plane. It had everything, and 0-0 ejection seats. You could eject from any attitude, any speed.
Wow. Yeah, Russians have always been known for their ejection seats, haven't they? Their ejection seats they're quite complicated, actually.
Yes, and quite clever with the sort of telescoping pylons that pop out and all this type of thing.
And take away body shock. It's all about removing body shock, isn't it?
Yeah. Russia still operates 300 or 400 of them. So they're quite, they're still out there. Syria operated them. I'm not sure if they still are, but, probably not. Ukraine, Sudan. So they're still out there. They're still effective. And as we saw, not that effective against F-16s, though.
No.
But
it gives you an insight into how they were attacking the people and equipment that they're using. So, okay, all right. So that's the Sukhoi Su-24. First flew 1967, in service 1974, and still in service. What do they cost?
They reckon the unit cost was 24 to 25 million.
Okay. It's quite high, I suppose, for Russia.
Yeah, like I said, it was a real demonstrator of their fully integrated attack and navigation computing.
Right, okay.
So that was its claim to fame at the time. Very similar to the F-111.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a technology, champion.
Well, it was part of the arms race at work, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Because they're in toe step almost back then, weren't they? Like one would bring out something and then the other would bring out something.
And if you read a bit more of the history of it, it's quite interesting. They had settled on a completely different configuration, yet when the F-111 came out, they decided to change it to look more like the F-111.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, as I say, it's a contest.
Yeah.
All right, so that's our program for yet another fortnight. We'll be back again in 2 weeks, and I guess we'll have a show or two before Christmas.
We will.
Will there be a special Christmas edition?
Oh, okay. Pressure.
I think there was last year,
but
there might have just been more of a coincidence than anything.
Yeah.
All right, okay, so until then, we'll see you soon. I'm Paul Brennan in Wellington.
Martin Noakes in Wellington.
See ya.
Cheers.